and welcome to the Fertility Conversations podcast. The goal of this podcast is to create more awareness about infertility and to provide support to people trying to conceive. Thank you for listening today, and we hope you will be encouraged. And now, here is your host, Ola.
Welcome to another episode of Fertility Conversations. Today, we are joined by a lovely guest, Lana Douglas, also known as the Chief Hope Officer. And I can certainly attest to that. She really is the Chief Hope Officer, does so much on her page to inspire every single day. Lana is a women's advocate, published model, influencer, writer, and motivational speaker. She understands that her platform, HopeStillStands, is way bigger than her. She's made it her life's mission to share her experiences with fertility struggles, sexual abuse, depression, and reproductive health issues as well. Lana has been married to the love of her life, Tim, for 18 years. She is a proud mom to two miracle daughters, Olivia and Aniyah, after going through years of infertility as well as secondary infertility. Her details would also be in the show notes. So welcome, Lana, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ola, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yay, thanks for being here. And we usually start off by saying, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I am a survivor, a model, a motivational speaker, a women's advocate, a wife, a mother. And I just share my story to inspire and ignite hope in others. I've been through so much and overcome so much, and I know that my story matters and other stories matter. So I just continue to share my journey to be the voice for those that are still suffering in silence.
Thank you so much for doing that. And it's so important that you highlighted it. It really is great when we see, read about your story, you hear about your story. It really does keep everybody else inspired and encouraged, because infertility can be such a challenging journey. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
So before we get into the fertility journey, I wanted to ask how you and your spouse met.
Yes. Oh, so my husband and I, we met working for a retail store. And I was the cashier. Actually, we started in orientation, and I saw him. I was like 19 years old, so I was really young still. And I thought he was cute, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought he was just too good for me, So years later, he actually approached me and asked me out on a date, and the rest is history.
Wow.
He just really swept me off my feet and loved my skin and loved me just for who I was without me having to change anything. So, and after that, we've just been on this journey together through the ups and downs. He's been by my side, and he's just my love. I call him my love, and he is that love.
Oh, that's so sweet. And thank you to that employer. Wow.
I know, right?
Little did they know, right?
Little did they know.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when you met or before that, I always just wonder, was there any point in time that you knew for sure you wanted to become a mom, or did it just happen over time after you met and you got married?
No, yeah. As a little girl, I would play with my dolls, and I would always rock them, like they were my babies. Mm. And I always longed for it, especially because I have 3 siblings, and I just saw how my mom and my dad interacted with us. I always wanted that. I wanted to be a mother, not realizing the journey that I would have to take. But as a young girl, I did have that feeling, you know what, one day I would love to be a mom.
And you have a condition, Didelphys Uterus.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what that is for anyone listening and not sure, and how were you diagnosed with it?
Yes. So a Didelphys Uterus means you have 2 complete separate horns. Like there's a separation in between. The average woman has 1 uterus. It's just shaped like almost like a triangle. Upside down triangle, but mine is split down the middle. So I have 2 complete separate horns, and I also have 2 complete separate cervixes. So some women that also have a Didelphys uterus will also have 2 uteruses, 2 cervixes, and also 2 vaginas. It's not talked about that much, but I share this part of my reproductive health journey because I know there's other women out there that maybe are never been diagnosed, maybe are suffering in silence, dealing with horrible periods. For me, at the age of 10, I started my period and it was just horrible. I was having horrible cramps, bleeding on myself, having accidents at school, having accidents at home. It would just come out like water. And I always felt like I would cramp for a couple of days on one side of my stomach. And then like 3 days later, I'll be cramping on the other side of my stomach. And I would explain to my doctors, something's not right. At the age of 15, I had my first pap smear and the doctor said that my cervix was invisible. Did not find out until I was in my 20s, almost mid 20s, when I finally was diagnosed with having a double uterus and a double cervix. And the doctor said, yes, you have 2 completely separate systems. So I was basically having 2 periods every month and no one was listening to me for 10 years, over 10 years, actually. I would explain to the doctors, like, I'm in so much pain. I'm popping ibuprofens like candy. I'm just excruciating pain. Sometimes I would miss school. Then when I started working, I would miss work. I remember being at the cash register one day at the same retail store where I met my husband, and I'm ringing up customers, and blood just gushes down my khakis. I had to back into office closet, call my sister and my cousin, and they had to wrap a jacket around me to rush me out the store. And, just embarrassing moments. And finally being diagnosed in my mid 20s, it was like validation. Like, this is what I've been screaming at the top of my lungs. I feel like I'm having 2 periods. What's going on? And so that's when I was finally diagnosed. And it just, after that, it was like a whirlwind after finally being officially diagnosed with a double uterus and a double cervix.
Wow. That must have been so much. Such a young age to go through all of that in your teenage years, and then to even make it worse, to have the doctors not even listening or not even taking enough time to actually see what's going on.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. My poor mom take me back and forth. My dad take me back and forth to the hospital, going to the emergency rooms. They were telling me that I had a cyst on my ovary, that it was growing from a golf ball size to an orange to a grapefruit. Well, that was my right uterus filling with blood because my right cervix was closed. So all those years I would have that gushing. Once my right uterus couldn't hold it anymore, everything would gush out. So finding out in my mid 20s that I had the Didelphys uterus, I was also told that I had endometriosis. So all that stuff, that blood was wrapped in fallopian tubes, wrapped around both of my uteruses. And it was like, this is what I've been trying to say. Especially as a Black woman, sometimes you feel like you're not being heard or that we can tolerate the pain. It's like, come on, we're the strong Black women, so we can tolerate it. No. Sometimes we can't tolerate it and we need someone to listen. That's why it's so important that we elevate our voices no matter what. And I'm so grateful that I didn't give up. I continue to seek out doctors, seek information. And I finally found the right doctor at Johns Hopkins. God bless her, that she really listened to me. She did a full, thorough exam. And she says, I think you have a double uterus. At the time, she didn't know what type because there's different types. So please, for the listeners out there, look up different types of uteruses. There's unicoordinate, there's bicoordinate. There's so many different types of uteruses, but it's not talked about in health class at school. It's not talked about, amongst the women that you see at work or in the store. So you don't hear about this, but there's women, girls out there suffering, dealing with this pain. And then also finding out you have endometriosis and fibroids. It's so much going on. That's why it's so important that we share our stories.
Yeah. And thank you so much for doing such an amazing job in sharing your story. Because again, like you said, there's so many other people that are probably working around dealing with this as well. And when you don't hear others talking about it or others dealing with it, then you think it's just you, and you probably just suffer in silence and isolation, not wanting people to know because you think it's just, you're the one that it's just you, right?
Mm-hmm. That's how I felt for many years. Looking at my sister, looking at my mom, I'm like, what, why am I going through this? And you start to second guess yourself, like, why? Especially because on top of that, I was bullied as a little girl. I went through sexual abuse as a little girl, and now I'm dealing with this bleeding and cramps. It was like, what else could happen to me? So you do feel like you're the only one. Woe is me. You're the only one, because you don't hear the stories, especially in our communities. For years, our foreparents in our community, in the Black community, they didn't share what was going on. If grandma had a miscarriage, they kept that to themselves.
Yeah.
If someone had to have a hysterectomy, they didn't say anything. If somebody was dealing with mental health issues, oh, well, that's Uncle so-and-so, don't worry about him. It was just something we did in our community. And so we don't, for a long time, we're not sharing our experiences with our family members and with our friends. So then you do feel like you're going through it by yourself, because you're not hearing any other people going through what you're going through.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And, knowing the fact, and of course, you highlighting that we don't speak about it enough and we don't have those conversations, and people try to do a lot of hush hush, knowing that's the reality oftentimes. And that was what your reality growing up as well. Why did you decide to then speak about it, knowing that how much of a taboo subject it is?
I think I started to realize that, you've come out of this, like I'm saying from, myself, I've come out of this situation. So I can't be the only one. There's millions of people on this planet. There's someone else out there that may have been going through, living with one kidney, or having a double uterus, or any other reproductive health issues, or maybe not sure of themselves, or not loving themselves, or thinking that they're ugly. And it's like, if I don't share what I've been through now that I found healing and forgiveness for myself and those that abused me and hurt me, I'm holding my testimony to myself. That's a disservice. That's a disservice to God, to myself, and my family. So I'm like, I have to help others, even if it's just a post on Instagram, even if it's just telling my story at a conference. If I help one person, one girl, one woman that is going through and may not be strong enough to share what they're going through, if I do that, then that means I'm fulfilling my purpose.
So well said, Lana. That's so beautiful to hear you speak about how, what your inspiration behind all of your advocacy work is. And thank you so much for choosing to share and choosing to raise your voice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for anyone listening, wondering how they can tell, are there any symptoms for the Didelphys uterus? Anything that they might look out for, or do they need to basically go to the hospital to get diagnosed?
Yeah, so some things that were standout points for me, like I said earlier, bleeding for, having cramps for 3 days. And then it's like, oh, it slows down on my left side. My leg is not in so much pain anymore. My back is feeling a little bit better. And then all of a sudden my right side is cramping. It's like, that's a red flag right there. Like, wait a minute, why am I having like a couple of days of cramps, and then it goes away, and then all of a sudden I'm cramping again on the other side of my body? That's a key right there. If you are bleeding like a lot and you're filling up your pads a lot, talk to your doctor. Like, something's not right. If your stomach starts to descend or swell up, you maybe have, blood filling up in your uterus. I remember when I went in to have that first laparoscopic surgery, she was like, I looked like I was 6 months pregnant. I never even thought about it. I was a really thin, young lady at the time, just with a belly. I just didn't really didn't pay attention to my belly. And she was like, no, you look like you're about 6 months pregnant. And it's like, sometimes we're thinking, oh, maybe it was because I ate too much or whatever. Just keep an eye on those things. If you feel like you're gaining weight in just one area, which is your belly, you may want to talk to your doctor. If you feel like you are very anemic, always cold, that's from bleeding a lot. Talk to your doctor. If the doctor doesn't listen to you, that one particular doctor, find someone else and keep going, because it's your body. I had to keep going. Even at that time, I was still dealing with low self-esteem and not understanding my worth. I had to fight and keep going and keep researching. And I'm just grateful for that courage to keep going, because if not, I would still be suffering in silence. And I'm 40 years old now. So it's so important. It's so important to use your voice, even if you're afraid. If the doctors are not listening, pack your stuff up, put your clothes on, research another doctor, and move on.
Thank you. So well said. Speaking out and advocating for ourselves is so, so important. Thank you so much for highlighting that.
Thank you.
While we are speaking about, of course, your symptoms and your laparoscopy, I actually just thought about it, that it'd be great to hear as much or as little as you'd like to share about your fertility journey before you then have your two wonderful miracle daughters now.
Yes. Yes. So for like, I had my first daughter, excuse me.
Sorry.
Excuse me. Drink some water, sorry. I had my first daughter in 2013, but before that, I went through 8 years of infertility. My husband and I went through that. After being diagnosed with the double uterus and a double cervix, they also diagnosed me with endometriosis and 3 fibroids. And I was, if the right words would say, I was overwhelmed because I never heard of endometriosis. I never heard of fibroids. I definitely never heard of women living with a double uterus. And I always knew I had one kidney. I was born with that. My parents found out when I was born that I also had blood on my stomach, but the doctors at that time did not research why I had blood on my stomach. I really think that was a sign about the double uterus, but I was a baby. So, but fast forward back to finding out all the, things I was diagnosed with, my doctor said, well, we got to start you on infertility drugs. So they first started me with Clomid. So for months, I'm taking Clomid. We keep trying. I'm doing the ovulation kits and pregnancy tests. Like, we're like buying them left and right and going to ultrasounds and blood work. And it was just a whirlwind, and we still were not getting pregnant. And mind you, I had 3 laparoscopic surgeries. So I had the removal of the endometriosis. I had to get a Foley catheter put in to open up my right cervix. And then I had to get it taken out. So it was a lot. So after doing the Clomid and still weren't getting pregnant, my doctor said, well, IUI will not work for you because you have a double uterus. It's just not going to work. So let's get you set up with a specialist so you can do IVF. So my husband and I were very optimistic. At this time, this is years that are passing by. This is probably 6 years at this point. And, I was very optimistic. My husband was also. So we go have our consultation and we start the process. I'm driving back and forth from work to this appointment to do ultrasounds, back and forth to get blood work, the whole 9. And finally it's transfer day. And we do the transfer. I'm so excited. I'm crying, but I remember the doctor that was doing the transfer having a hard time getting the speculum to connect, I guess, with my cervix because of my double cervix. I remember that, but I was still optimistic. So when my husband and I went home, we were so happy. I was crying, was so happy. Time comes, the nurse calls us and she gives us the results. Mr. and Mrs. Douglas, just want to let you know the results is negative. I remember dropping the phone and screaming, crying. I was angry with just how this process has happened and how we still were not pregnant. I'm thinking like, we are good people. We're doing all things right. We treat people right. We go to work. We go to church. We were just good people. I honestly was upset with God being a preacher's kid, being a Christian. I was like, Lord, what? I see people left and right giving up their children, left and right complaining. I have 2 girls, but I wanted a boy and a girl. I have 2 boys, but it's like, really, we just want one. So I was just so upset, hurt. The depression that I've had and the low self-esteem that I had for years from, being a young girl dealing with bullying and sexual abuse, that really rose up. It was like a dark cloud. I was so depressed. I was having thoughts of suicide. And I remember one day my husband was at work working night shift. And I always share this because it's important. I know there's other people, men, women, girls, boys that have gone through this where you're at your lowest. You feel like your life has no purpose. I remember looking at the butcher board with all the different knives, the different, shapes and how sharp they are, and the serrated knives. And I'm pulling up each knife to see which one is sharp enough to cut my throat. Because I was like, I can't give my husband a child. Remember, I'm still that girl that those old thoughts of being too dark and being ugly and being touched, they were rising up. Like, you can't even get pregnant. So yeah, you are worthless. And I remember pulling the sharpest knife, and the Lord said to me, your life has a purpose. Hope still stands. So that name, my middle name, is actually Hope. But all the years up to that point, I didn't understand what hope meant. I'm carrying the name Leanna Hope, but not understand who I am. And he said, your life has purpose. And I remember putting the knife back into the butcher board. And a couple of days later, my husband said to me, you know what? Let's just move on. Let's not even think about having children. Let's just love each other just as we are. Let's just move on from the infertility. Let's not even think about it. And literally, it was almost 8 years. We went to this ball. We danced. We just loved each other. We just were free. 5 months later, I wake up and I said, let me take a pregnancy test. My husband is not in the bed. I'm like, where is he? He's downstairs. At the time, I don't know what he's doing, but he's downstairs. I get up. I said, let me take a pregnancy test. If it's negative, I'm not going to tell my husband because we're used to this. I was like, it doesn't matter. I'll just take the test. I get the test. I do what I do what I have to do to take the test. And I said, Leanna, don't look at it. Give it 3 minutes like you're supposed to. Don't look at it. I looked at it right away, and there was 2 lines. I remember screaming. My husband runs upstairs, and he's like, what's wrong, baby? What's wrong? And I'm like, there's 2 lines. I didn't even know what that meant. I've taken so many pregnancy tests, and I've only seen 1 line. So 2 lines. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? I'm like screaming. I'm crying. I'm trembling. I don't understand. And my husband looks at the box. He was like, babe, that means you're pregnant. I'm like, no, I see you're lying. There's no way. Wow. The next day I was able to get an emergency ultrasound because I was high risk. And lo and behold, we were pregnant, 5 weeks pregnant with our miracle daughter, Olivia. Now, back to what my husband was doing while I was taking the pregnancy test, I have to always mention this. He was laying on the floor praying and reading about Hannah in the Bible, how she petitioned the Lord for a baby, not knowing at the same time I'm upstairs taking a pregnancy test. I mean, that's God amazing. Does all things well. He does all things well. And now our oldest is 9 years old. So it's a blessing.
Testimony. Yes.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing. And then God took us on another journey. After having her, we thought we would get pregnant right away with our second child. That didn't happen. So years go by, but we were content and grateful because we had our one. We had our miracle, our first miracle. We were content because we knew there were so many others that were in the place we used to be in, feeling we would never have children. So we were grateful. We were like, no, Lord, you blessed us with this one child. We can't take it for granted. But we were longing still for another. Fast forward to December 2020, actually October 2020, I was having so much pain on my left side. I never had problems with my left uterus. I said, something's not right. Go to my primary care, go to get an ultrasound. They said it's a cyst on my left ovary. I said, I don't believe you. I said, something else is going on. Well, those fibroids had grown. Those fibroids that I was told to not worry about grew over time. Had surgery in February of 2021. We were pregnant with this miracle that's laying in my arms right now. We found out in September of 2021, we were pregnant. She came into our lives. I gave birth to her April 2022. So these 2 miracles, I went through 8 years of infertility before each one of them. And now we are we are the proud parents of 2 miracles 9 years apart.
What a testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so inspiring.
Thank
Oh my
you.
goodness. Yeah. Oh, so
Thank
beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing and really just raising awareness. But it's so important because, again, I'm sure there are other people listening or someone out there just hearing your story or feeling that exact same way that you might have felt in between your journey and just wondering what's going on. Why is God taking so long on this whole, when he blesses so many other people without them even trying? So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And all through growing, all that time, 9 years apart for your 2 daughters, all that time, how did you find support? Were there other people or anyone else that you knew that was dealing with infertility or something similar?
Yeah, so what's funny that you mentioned that, because when I was going through infertility in my 20s into my 30s with our first child, I didn't know any support groups. I didn't know anyone else going through infertility. I didn't know anyone that was, going through what I was going through. So it was really hard. The second time around, it was so much support. Now, my family always supported and loved and prayed and was there. But seeing someone that you could relate to, I didn't find that in the first go around. But the second go around, there's so many support groups, so many women that were telling their stories that helped me along the journey. And I'm grateful, for women like you. There's so many women out there, so many support groups and platforms that are not afraid to speak up on infertility and IVF and, all the other things that women go through. So that has been even greater support. And then it allows me to continue to share what I've gone through. So that's why it's so important to have these support groups and platforms and the many various women from different backgrounds to share their story, because we are so much more alike than we know. It's not based on our color or our economic status or where we're from. There's so many, we're linked and we don't even realize it. Yeah, we're linked, and it's like we have to be unafraid to be a light for others. We have to be unafraid to use our voice. So I'm grateful this time around. My mindset was so much better. I was depressed those years ago. This time I was optimistic. I was grateful. And I was like, whatever, God, whatever you have for me, whatever you have for my family, for my husband, it is well. It is well with my soul. It was completely different. So yes, it's a difference this time around.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And of course, you highlighted during your journey how this impacted you, also your emotions and your mental health and the depression. And of course, we're so thankful that God spoke to you during that time, one of your lowest moments. After that time or during that time, did you find any support with counseling, or how were you able to go through that on a daily basis?
Yes, much prayer. Talking about it was very helpful to me. I want to still go to a therapist. I have yet to go to a therapist. There's a lot of things that I feel like, I think we all, let me say it this way. I feel like therapy should be afforded to anyone that's going through infertility, anyone that just gave birth, anyone that goes through postpartum. Therapy should automatically be part of the medical system without us actually searching for it. It should, if you're doing IVF, okay, part of the IVF process is you're going to see this therapist, you're going to see this psychologist, you're going to see this, social worker, so that you could talk about your feelings while you're going through. Oh, we're going to put you in a support group with other women that are going through what you're going through, other couples. That's one thing that I'm advocating for, and I'm going to continue talking about, and I want to talk about more. When you're going through infertility, when you get pregnant, postpartum, because even when I got pregnant, the fact that you go through infertility and you become pregnant and have a baby, you still are part of the infertility community, because that part of your life never goes away. It's still something that stays with me. Just like that little girl that was sexually abused, she's always with me. I cannot say, well, it's done. Now, I'm not saying I'm wallowing in the pain. I'm not wallowing in the pain or being depressed about it, but it stays with me because I can relate to anyone else that is currently in that situation. So therapy, I really believe therapy, psychologist, social worker, along the journey from infertility to motherhood, we should be afforded a therapist regardless of whatever step or whatever part of our journey we're in. It should be part of our medical, our medical journey.
Benefits. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for highlighting that. Really, really so important. And I'm so sorry that you also had that experience of sexual abuse while you were growing up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking out about it as well.
Thank you.
And of course, you mentioned, again, going back to the fact that no one really speaks about this, and you're changing that narrative. You're speaking out, you're using your voice, you're advocating for women's health and fertility journey, sharing your story, helping others to feel alone, which is all such incredible things that you're doing. I wonder for anyone listening as well, what can we all do to help create more awareness and educate people, and for people to be less judgmental, right? Because sometimes people might be like, well, I don't want to do IVF. IVF is not like proper, quote unquote. I should do it naturally. Why did you have to do that? Like, how do we all get to understand that, yes, different paths to parenthood, but still God is in it? Or, what are your thoughts on that? What can we all do to be less judgmental with different paths to parenthood?
Yeah, it's like everybody's on their own chapter in their story. And you don't know what it took for us to get to the point we're at right now. I've learned to not be judgmental of other people because I don't know what they went through. I don't know what they're going through. They always talk about IVF, the test tube baby. It's not those things. When they say that, it's not funny. It's not funny. It's like, you don't know all the things that a particular person may have went through. They may have had loss. They may have been trying for years and they still cannot get pregnant. And they're like, you know what, I'm trying IVF and I'm doing multiple cycles and I'm still not pregnant. You don't know what people are going through. We have to be more caring. We have to be more compassionate towards others. You just never know. Because the one time you say something that is derogatory or as a joke, that may be that one time that person falls off the cliff. You never know. And we have to be careful of how we treat others. Like, case in point, one thing that I highlight every time April Fool's comes up, I repost that it's not funny to come out and say you're pregnant and then like, oh, I'm just playing April Fools. You never know what people are going through. That's a trigger for someone that may have lost their baby or have been trying for years. I just was at a conference recently and a woman got up and shared her story. She said, she was happily married and they've been trying for years and she has fibroids and it's just been a long battle. And her husband left her. Her husband said, I can't be with you anymore because you can't give me children. We never know what someone is going through. And then on the flip side of that, if you are someone that is going through, be unafraid if you can. And it comes with healing. It really comes with healing. But be unafraid to share parts of your journey. It also, as I've been sharing over the years, it's helped me find healing. Because you hear other people say, you know what, I went through the same thing you went through. I have been so afraid to share what I've been through, but because you're sharing your story, now I can share mine. So it's very important to be compassionate, but also try to share your story as much as you can.
Well said. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
And for anyone listening, because you said so many amazing and inspiring, and you've really encouraged many of us right now with sharing your story and all that you're doing. For anyone listening and wondering what Hope Still Stands platform does and what's the best way for them to reach you, can you please share?
Sure. Yes, I'm on Instagram at HopeStillStands, and it's just like how it sounds, HopeStillStands. Still, STILL stands. And I am modeling. I am sharing my story. I write sometimes for different platforms. And I'm a women's advocate. So you'll see me post. Sometimes I feel like I'll post a picture and yeah, that captures, oh yeah, I see that picture and it's beautiful. But it's the story, it's the verbiage that I have with that picture, with that reel, that I want to leave with the listeners and my followers. So definitely find me on Instagram. You can also contact me there if you ever want to just talk. I check my DMs often. And I just want to continue to inspire. And I hope that whatever I do is leaving something special on your life that you feel like you can make it.
Oh, it definitely is. And I love your reels and your platform on Instagram. Well done.
Thank you.
And just to ask, in terms of infertility and the whole journey, how would you say that has impacted you and perhaps your relationship with your husband?
Oh my goodness. The first 8 years of going through infertility, it was pretty stressful. We still held on to each other, but it was stressful. We were both stressed out. Now that's something I also want to touch on. We always talk about what the woman is going through, but men are trying to be strong for us, but we don't know the pain that they're going through. And we always have to be careful to never forget the man's perspective. And my husband, he would go to my doctor's appointments with me. And I'm not saying every man has to do that, but he would do that. He would go to the doctor's appointments, take me to my surgeries. And I just remember how it impacted him. And over the years, we've just gotten even closer. We fell in love all over again. And it's just great to be parents now to 2 miracle girls, to see him as a girl dad. It just warms my heart. It's just all I've dreamed of and what I wanted for him to experience and wanted for us to experience. But I also want to say, even if, to the listeners out there, if you don't ever get pregnant, if you don't ever have children naturally that come out of your womb, you are still enough. You are still worthy. When I was going through infertility in my 20s, I didn't see my worth. I thought my worth was in having children because the Bible says to be fruitful and multiply. That's what I thought my worth was in. If I have children, okay, then I'm worthy. I was worthy if I didn't have children, if I wasn't married, I was worthy all by myself. You are worthy by yourself on the journey. You are enough. Remind yourself daily, you are enough. And then if you're blessed with all these other things, that's all right, but you are enough anyhow. So it's so important. We can't lose ourselves on the journey, because I felt like a robot going through IVF. I'm like, I'm just a robot. I'm just going through the motions. Look, I was still enough, but I didn't see it then. I see it now. And it's so important that we don't lose ourselves on the journey, because we can get lost. We can be carrying the baby in our womb and still feel like we're a robot. Don't forget who you are.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And, so much has happened over the years with all you went through your journey and even your teenage years. If you could go back in time to speak to perhaps, I don't know, 18-year-old or 21-year-old Lana, what would you tell her?
I would tell her the journey may be hard that you're about to go on.
She wanted to say hello. Yeah, it's about time.
The journey you're about to go on may be hard, but it's going to be worth the fight. You are strong enough. You are able. You have a purpose in this life. So keep going. Your voice matters. Your life matters. So keep going every step of the way. It may seem like you will never get to all that you feel that you deserve, but it's going to happen. You are beautiful. You are special. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And the time is going to come where you'll be standing while the dust and things going on around you, you will still be standing. So don't ever give up.
Oh, I love all of it.
Thank
So
you.
well said. Thank you. These are wonderful. And those are actually affirmations for all of us as well. We can keep repeating that and reminding ourselves about every single day. So still very
Yes.
applicable today.
Hmm.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And as a wrap up, what words of encouragement or advice would you give any other person or couple listening and currently trying to conceive, either primary infertility or secondary?
Definitely to be encouraged on the journey. Also speak to your family members. Find out if anyone else has been going through what you've been going through and maybe have never shared it. I found on my journey that my mom had issues with bleeding. My sister had issues with bleeding. My aunt, and it's like, wow, we didn't talk about it as much. But once I started speaking and asking, it was like, yeah, I've been having these issues and I had to do this and that. So definitely talk to, your family members. If they don't want to talk about it, that's okay. At least you know, tried, did your best to get some information from them. But on your journey, be encouraged, know your worth, use your voice, no matter if the doctor says you have to go down this route. If you don't feel, easy with that decision, then go for a second opinion, go for a third opinion. And for those that are married or in relationships, hold close to each other. Don't forget that your love was the foundation first. So hold on to each other. For me, God is our foundation, but our love was what we were standing on. So don't lose what you started when you became one or got married or became got into a relationship with each other. Don't lose who you are and what made you fall in love with each other in the first place. But never give up. I'm a witness that it's not over until God says it's over. Don't ever give up. When it's your time, it's going to be your time. And like I said before, but if you don't ever have babies naturally, there's so many other avenues. I mean, things have changed, surrogacy and adoption and foster care. There's so many other avenues. And just being, a volunteer or helping a child in your neighborhood or in your church or whoever. There's so many ways that you can be a parent. So many ways that you can mentor and uplift and giving birth through your vision, through your purpose, through your business, whatever you have in your heart that you want to do it. While you're on the journey of infertility, go after that job you want to go after. Start that business. Be an entrepreneur, whatever it is, you still are worthy. So don't lose that.
So beautiful, Anna. That was such a wonderful way to wrap up this episode with you. And it really has been amazing, so inspirational having you here. You've shared so much. You have really uplifted me, and I'm sure you have done so for many other listeners as well. And if there's anyone listening that's not following you, please go on Instagram and follow at HopeStillStands. You really will be inspired and encouraged on a daily basis. So thank you so much, Lana, for using your voice and for all that you do every single day, for sharing your story, for speaking out, for using your voice. The impact you're making is so profound, and you're not aware of how many lives you're touching globally. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you so much, Ola. I really appreciate you. Thank you for this platform and this opportunity to share my story. And I'm grateful for what you are doing. You are using your voice, living in your purpose while you're on your journey. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And I'm just so grateful for all that you are doing. We are turning our pain into purpose.
Yes.
And I'm grateful for all that you are doing. I'm thankful for the connection. And thank you so much again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for being here today, and we look forward to having you again in the near future. Thank you. And thank you to Aniyah for allowing us the opportunity to have this recording as well. She's been so quiet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Fertility Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Fertility Conversations. If there are any topics you would like to have discussed, please send an email to fertilityconversations@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you again for listening. Take care of yourself and do stay hopeful.